Hi, this is Rodrigo from Frame Freak Studio, and this is the Creative Hustler Show. Today we have Andrew Hickinbottom here. He's from London, and he's an amazing artist. So, welcome, Andrew.
Oh yeah, good to be here.
So first of all, for the people who don't know about you, can you tell us a little bit about your history, how you got started into art, and why you decided to become a professional artist?
When I was a kid, like 10, 15 years old, I always wanted to do cartoons. I always wanted to be a cartoonist. I read a lot of comics, and when films like Who Framed Roger Rabbit and Disney films and all that sort of stuff, and all the 80s cartoons, Transformers, Ninja Turtles, stuff like that. I always wanted to be a cartoonist, but I kind of thought deep down that that's probably like a bit of a pipe dream, and it wouldn't happen, because kids, I want to be an astronaut, I want to be a race car driver. It's just one of those things that doesn't seem like a feasible job, especially since everybody and my brother and my dad were engineers. Well, they grew up to become engineers, so I kind of thought it was a bit of a frivolous job that wouldn't really amount to much. But I kept at it, and I went to art college to draw, to practice my drawing skills. I was really good at drawing at school. And then as soon as I started using computers, I kind of stopped drawing, which was one of my biggest regrets of my life, because when you stop drawing, you kind of get out of practice a bit. But as a result of that, me using computers a lot more meant that I was picking up digital art and 3D as a hobby back in the days when like it was in its infancy. And when films like when video games started becoming in 3D, like Virtua Fighter, Tekken, um, Virtua Racer, things like that, I just realised how much potential there was with 3D. And then there were TV programs like Reboot, and obviously when Toy Story came out, I was like, "This is it. There's a definite future in this. I should keep with it." So I carried on doing 3D as a hobby. I got better and better at it, experimenting, teaching myself all the different techniques and all the different tools, and experimenting on all sorts of new things. And it kind of thought that, yeah, you've got Pixar, you've got Toy Story, but you can't really make a logical career out of this, because the industry at that time in the late 90s was in such infancy that there was no real way to get a job unless you were working at, say, Pixar. So I thought, okay, trying to be realistic, I'm gonna do graphic design. So I went to university for 3 years in Wolverhampton in the UK to do graphic design, and that was another big mistake in my life, because 3 years I didn't really progress much. I mean, I learned how to do better graphic design, but as the 3 years went by, I realised that the reality of graphic design at the time was actually quite boring, because I wanted to do all like cool stuff like the game Wipeout. You had like the Designers Republic, and they did all the beautiful graphic design and all the menus and the cool stuff, and I just wanted to do stuff like that. But the reality of it is that you just basically end up doing double page spreads for double glazing magazines or local adverts and stuff like that, just like kind of boring stuff. So I kind of regretted doing graphic design for 3 years instead of, say, illustration or web design, or because back then there wasn't really a 3D animation course, because it was still in its infancy. So you had to do other things like illustration or sculpture or something. But anyway, I carried on doing my design course just to get my degree. But progressing into my third year of graphic design.
The volume got a little bit down.
Oh, sorry, I'll just help my phone in a different way, and I think I must have blocked up the microphone on it. I need to get a directional mic for it or something.
Yeah. Can you repeat the last bit, please?
Okay. In the third year of my graphic design course, there was a module called professional placement, which is a bit like work experience, but for grown-ups. Somewhere to go to apply what you've learned as a graphic designer is in a local business. So I chose this place called Synthetic Dimensions, who at the time were doing some pretty impressive stuff for how few 3D companies there were. So they were doing some music videos for Iron Maiden and a few video games here and there. And I thought, well, if I were there as a graphic designer, I really want to do. So I kind of went in there under the pretense of a graphic designer. And then the first 2 days, I showed them that I really wanted to do 3D. So then I became a 3D artist there. And as soon as I finished my university course, I got a job there. So although graphic design was a kind of a bit of a waste of 3 years of me learning stuff, it did help me get my first job in the industry, which is always super important.
Nice. I do have a similar experience because many of my friends in the country that we are in, the closest thing to anything about artists is like graphic design, and that's like the only careers we have in the universities here. And I remember everybody telling me like, "Oh, you draw, like you should go to graphic design." And then when I was there in my second year, like it was like painfully obvious, like, okay, like this is not what I had in mind at all.
Yeah.
And then we went out, and pretty much like many of my friends started dropping out from school little by little. Some became like amazing 3D artists because now they have all this free time, and they have like a basis where they, and it was like in the beginning where the internet started to becoming something really good, like early 2000, something like that. But there were starting to become like these resources that we could learn, where we could learn to do all this art without needing to go to a school, and we took advantage of that moment. And I realized, like, years later, all our friends graduating from graphic design were bumping into us, and they started to realize that all these people that had dropped out from school at the time and focused all the time into learning from the internet knew how to use the programs and how to do stuff much better than they did.
Well, the weird thing was is that back then there weren't really that many. Back then there weren't really many outlets for me to learn 3D. I had a friend who kind of helped me get into 3D. So me and him were just like sharing tips and experiences. So if one of us figured out how to use particle simulation, we'd share the information amongst ourselves. Or if I figured out how to do some cool morph effect or something like that, I'd tell him. So it was just us two experimenting with 3D stuff and just sharing our experiences, because back then the internet was in its infancy, and it wasn't always on, and it was expensive, and you didn't get magazines. You did get magazines, but there were multi-format things, like Amiga format, which was it was about all of Amiga computers rather than just the 3D side of it. So you didn't have anything like 3D World or anything like that. But funnily enough, it was actually a magazine that gave me my first ever taste of 3D. I had an Amiga computer before I had a PC, and there was a disc on the front for some software called Imagine 3D that was worth like £250, something like that, probably about $300. And it was a really, really basic 3D program, but they did some good stuff with it, and they showed you some examples, and that was enough to get me started, if you know what I mean. And then when I found out that one of my favorite TV series as a kid, Babylon 5, which is a big CG space series that was kind of before Deep Space Nine, they did all the effects for that using Lightwave on an Amiga computer. And I was like, I've got an Amiga computer. I could get Lightwave if I wanted to. And that just meant that it was a bit more doable. It meant that that there was a bit more of a link, and I could do what they do. So I just kept trying to improve and get better and better. And as video games were getting better and better, my desire to learn more got more. Like when Tekken 3 came out, that was the first fighting game, I believe, that had actual skinned characters rather than like characters with sausages for limbs. So that made me want to learn how to skin characters, and just gradual improvement in my skills based on the things that were around me.
Nice. Also, something that I wanted to ask you is that lately I've been interviewing a lot of people. Most of them choose to go into the 2D art. What made you choose 3D? What made you like 3D and love it?
Um, it's hard to say, because when I was younger, I really wanted to be a cartoonist. I was really, really good at drawing, when I was at secondary school. But I don't know, because I was young and because technology was cool and everything was like developing and there was loads of new stuff coming out. I was just drawn by computers and digital art, and I just wanted to learn that before I got good at 2D, if you know what I mean. And that's kind of a big regret for me now, because I see a lot of 2D artists, a lot of really skilled 2D artists that can pick up 3D really quickly, because essentially it's just software that you're learning. But if you're a skilled 3D artist like myself with a lot of experience, you can have all the experience in the world at doing 3D, but you can't just learn drawing like it's software. You know, it's something that comes with years and years of experience and practice. And in a way, 3D that applies to 3D as well, because the more times you model something, the better you get at doing it. But it's still just software. But when you draw something, there's like a fundamental understanding that you have to know. And that's one of my complexes at the moment, is that that's something that I feel I lack. So right now I do 3D because it's kind of a means to an end to do what I want to do, which is to do illustration and pin-up artwork. But it's just really time consuming and really technically bogged down in like, crap. Whereas when you're drawing, you just put pencil to paper and within an hour you can sketch something out really nice and really quickly. It's a lot more spontaneous. So I'm trying to get back into drawing. And also because like 90% of the other artists that I follow out there are 2D artists as well, because there's just something about their artwork that I don't know. I'm kind of at the moment, I kind of feel like I could give up, if I could give up all of my 3D skills and apply it to 2D instead. I'd be happy to do that. But the problem is 3D is kind of like where all the jobs are at the moment, because everybody wants to do 3D, which is also another downside, because as you know from animated films, everything's 3D now, and I kind of miss the old days when it's hand drawn, So yeah, I'm rambling. I'll get back on point.
Also, I have a friend who, again, went full onto 3D, and something that I realized, as you say, is like 3D is pretty hard, because when it was made, so far as I understand, it was made into the thinking where you have like a team doing the modeling, team doing the textures and all that, and when there is just one person trying to learn like particles, water,
Yeah.
textures, modeling, it becomes really hard. Uh, what was something that you didn't expect when you went into 3D, the 3D industry, that came painfully true, and also what was something that you were expecting that came actually true as well?
So the question was, what about teams, and I missed a few little bits of that.
No, what was something that you found out into the 3D art that you didn't expect it at all?
Um, the sheer speed at which the technical aspect of it moves, because in the early days, I loved the fact that there was always new tools, there was always new software, new development, better rendering methods, better modeling methods. But now that I've been doing it for 20 years, you just want to create, you don't want to get bogged down in all the technical stuff. So when you see all the new stuff that comes out now and all the new tools and everybody's using them, it's like, I don't know, when you've been in the industry for 15 years or so, you kind of, it varies on the person. Some people are just drawn to keep continuing and learn all the new stuff. Some people just get fed up with all the technical stuff and they just want to get their work done. So from a technical aspect, I don't think I'm quite a brilliant technical artist. I just use the tools that I know to get the job done. And as a result, sometimes you kind of lack that edge, if you know what I mean, in today's industry. I mean, everybody's using ZBrush now, or ZBrush, and I can use it, but I still find it really strange to use because I'm so used to using 3ds Max. So yeah, I mean, it's hard to be a generalist at everything. I mean, most people pick one field that they're good at and stick to it. So I'm kind of a generalist, because when I do my illustration artwork, rather than just make a cool character and render it in a T pose on a grey background, I want to make an illustration, something with a background, something that's got personality and character. And to do that, you need to know how to rig, skin, light, pose, render, texture. And I'm trying to like be a bit of a generalist, but when it comes to stuff like animation and effects and particles, I'm pretty clueless now because I haven't done that for years.
Great. Also, I see that in your style, it resembles, even though it is 3D, it resembles a lot of 2D cartoons. Uh, where do you take your inspiration to do these kind of things?
Well, I've got a lot of inspirations, and as I was saying earlier, like about 90% of everything that I love are their 2D artworks. I mean, first and foremost, I'd probably say that my all-time favorite artist is Shane Glines. He works for Warner Brothers. He did a lot of character design for the Batman and Superman animated TV series, but I just love how he does pin-ups because there's a nice sort of fluidity about them and the variation of shapes and the stylization and the amount of appeal. And there's just something really nice about them. And I'll try to incorporate a little bit of that into my work. And there are some other artists as well. And it's just kind of like almost like I wish that I want to draw like them, but because my drawing abilities aren't that great, I try and incorporate everything that I want to do from a 3D point of view, even if it means sort of having to fake it a bit. Like sometimes you render a character on a separate layer and you do the background separately, maybe in 2D, but just whatever it takes to get the end result. But some stuff that I do, you model it and it renders pretty much straight like that. You don't need to do much post processing on it or stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've got I've got some inspirations from all different things. I mean, there's some people, some brand new artists now. There's some really old artists. There's like some of the old pin-up guys from the 1940s, like Gil Elgren, Albert, oh, crap, I forget his name. Alberto Vargas. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, there's just a lot of artists that use either really cartoony shapes or pin-up artists that use like the female form. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of inspirations out there, and I always try and incorporate a little bit of what inspires me about them into my work.
Nice. Also, we found your work in CTNX this year, which was our first big event that we attended in our life. So it was a little bit overwhelming for us. There was a lot to watch. Uh, do you attend a lot to CTNX, or what is something that you do from time to time?
Did I watch a lot at CTN?
Do you go a lot into the CTNX event, or is it something that you do from time to time?
Oh, well, I did it for the first time in 2014, partially for CTN and partially as an excuse to go on a big long road trip in a Mustang. Because I've always wanted to have a big trip around California. But that was the first time I went to CTN, and I absolutely loved it because I kind of that was kind of the point where I kind of got a little bit disillusioned with some of the Comic Cons that I do in London, because London's got 2 or 3 major Comic Cons every year, and because of how popular Marvel films and the fact that there's so many comic book films nowadays, people are like rabid for the pop culture side of things. So when they go to these events, they go to buy things that they're familiar with. It's like, so I've had some people come up to my table and then like, have you got any Harley Quinn or have you got any Catwoman or something? And it's I don't really do much fan art stuff, so it kind of dawned on me that a lot of the Comic Cons, it's all about fan art, and I've seen some people there that weren't particularly brilliant artists, but they were really successful because they were doing fan art, and people want to buy things that they know when they go to these events. Yeah. So the thing that I love about CTN is because it's not a pop culture event. It's not about comics. It's not about films or anime or something like that. It's just all about people doing their own thing. So people go with an open mind to support artists, to support their own projects, to see what they're working on. And there's no real corporate presence there. I mean, you've got Disney, you've got Pixar, DreamWorks, Nickelodeon, Cartoon Network, stuff like that. But it's all about art, animation, and illustration rather than like the latest Marvel movie or something like that. So because of that, and because of the fact that people go with an open mind to just support people's own endeavors, and also the fact that there's so many of my favorite artists that exhibit there as well, it's a great event. It's like I'll sell something and then I'll take the money that I've sold to get a commission from somebody. So it's exhibiting there is kind of like spending money for me, you know.
Definitely. What would be your advice to make the most out of this event?
Um, I'm probably the wrong person to ask, really, because I mean, I'll be going this November. This will be my fourth time there, and every time you're pretty much shackled to the table, you know, because you don't want to leave your table for too long in case you miss out on a bunch of sales, or you miss some friends that come by to say hi. So other than venturing out to get the odd commission or talk to some friends or go to the toilet or get some food or something, I don't really wander too much at CTN. So I've never done any panels or I've never done any demonstrations or anything. So it's kind of hard to say, but you know, I mean, I've seen how big some of the queues can be. So if you want to go to a really popular talk, I tried to go to a talk by some of the guys that were involved on the Iron Giant last year, and we got there like really early, and we still couldn't get in. So if you want to go to a talk, get there early. But I think there are passes that you can buy that specifically get you into some of the talks. So that's the option as well. As for everything else, just walk around, take your time, and support the artists that you like.
Nice. Also, I went to London for a little while, a couple of months ago. I was specifically to a business event. However, something that many people told me while I was in Europe in general, it was that London had like a big industry for creative animation, things like that. Which events would you recommend for people who want to get into this in London?
Um, to be honest, I've no idea. I mean, I'm not that savvy when it comes to industry events. I mean, this thing called industry workshops was on this weekend in London, and that's meant to be a pretty big one, but I've never been to it, so I can't say. Um, I mean, you've got all the big comic cons and stuff, but that's not really a great place to find work, I guess. It's hard to say, really. I mean, working at a studio in London, a place called Nexus Productions, was the reason I moved to London 7 years ago. I mean, I mostly work freelance from home now, but I do work in a few studios from time to time. But regarding events to get to know people, I'm not really sure. I mean, there's a few events that I go to where you get people from like a Cine site or Double Negative or Frame Store, and they do a presentation on how they did the effects for Guardians of the Galaxy or the new Monsters University or stuff. I've been to events like that in the past, but there is a networking aspect to those, where you meet up with people that you know and all the people from the studios are there. But again, I wouldn't really call it an industry event to like, get a job, so I don't really have much knowledge of that kind of thing, I'm afraid.
Okay, no problem. Also, for people who want to start becoming a 3D artist, what will be your advice? Because there is a lot of people who, I think, or better say yet, what is the most common mistake that you see people who want to join the 3D, who want to become a 3D artist, but it's the most common mistake that you see them making that they should not be making?
Um, I think probably the most important thing for me is to just be original, because there's a lot of people out there that do the same sort of things, but it all depends on what you want. Because if you want to work at a big studio modeling weapons or robot suits for a video game or something like that, then yeah, I mean, there's a lot of samey stuff out there that looks like that. But if it's done well, then yeah, you can get that kind of work. But it depends what you want. I mean, if you want to be like, again, this is hard to say because I mean, I consider myself more of an illustrator. I mean, I do a lot of strictly modeling work based from other people's designs. Like my main freelance client at the moment is Hasbro, and I model toys for them. So that's basically me modeling something based on a design, and that's it. So there's no creation aspect to it. It's just the pure modeling side. So, but from a personal satisfaction point of view, from my personal work, I prefer to do illustration stuff. But if people want to do strictly modeling, yeah, I guess the best thing to do is to just practice doing and just try and be original, because so many people, everybody wants to do 3D nowadays. It's easier than ever to learn. The software is more affordable. There's more resources, more magazines, more events, more schools. You can do it all online. It's easier than ever to learn 3D now, and everybody wants to do it because everything is 3D now. All the animation, all the films, special effects, all the Marvel movies and whatnot. So there's a huge influx of people out there that are looking for work, and the market can kind of get a bit saturated at times. So if you want to stand out, probably the best thing to do is to either do something that's so stupendously good that it stands out, or something that's so original that it stands out. Because there's a lot of like samey stuff out there, and it's kind of hard to stand out when everything looks so similar. If you know what I mean. I guess that's the thing. Just trying to stand out in a large crowd is quite difficult. I mean, when I was getting into 3D, there weren't that many people doing it, so it was a lot easier. But nowadays, everybody has to struggle unless they're just exceptionally good.
Nice. Definitely. Also, I think, as you mentioned, like there is a lot of options. Internet has definitely changed a lot and has made this a lot easier. Like there are sites like Animator Mentor and things like that.
Yeah.
How do you feel that the internet has changed in the industry, professionally speaking?
Tremendously. I mean, I wish I had it back then, because you hear about people that picked up ZBrush or they picked up character modeling, and their work is phenomenal. And it's like they picked it up in less than a year, and you're like, what? Because back in the day, there wasn't much in the way of tuition. There's no, you got like those ginormous thick like books, and that was about it. There were no magazines, there were no courses, there was no Google, no internet tutorials or animation mentor or anything like that. So learning was very slow, and it was a long process of experimentation. Whereas now people can get courses doing exactly what they want. Like there's Mold 3D, which just does courses, well, which does some really good courses about character modeling. And there's some people within that course that do character modeling within a specific style. So now it's not just about learning 3D as a generalist thing. You can actually specify a particular style or a particular thing. Like you can learn 3D modeling for 3D printing, you can learn 3D modeling for animation, you can learn 3D modeling for stylized stuff. It's very like it's great because there's so many resources out there now, and there's so many tutorials, and everybody on places like 3D Total do tutorials as well. And there's people on Gumroad and individual artists that publish books and PDFs. The internet's just changed it a huge deal. I mean, there's just so much out there now to learn from, and it's changed a lot.
Definitely. Also, uh, something that comes up a lot for artists who want to become professional artists is this thing about the learning the business skills to get the clients, to get freelancers, to build a studio, whatever. How was this path for you to learn the business skills needed in order for you to get the opportunities that you got?
It sounds really unprofessional, but I didn't. I basically, I'm in a really fortunate position. I mean, it's changing a little bit nowadays because the market's getting so saturated. But for a huge period of time, I basically didn't have to look for work. I got that first job. I worked at a few full-time studios, and then I became a freelancer. And since then, I was quite fortunate for most of my jobs to just sort of land in my lap, because I had such a huge passion to continue to drive myself forward and to do 3D in my own time when I'm not on a paid job. That did that resulted in a lot of the personal work that you see when you look at my website and my portfolio. And my personal work got me noticed. It got me a following online. And when people notice your work, they offer you jobs. So I never really had to join. I've never joined an agency. I've never actively sought work, or I've never bothered with CVs and stuff like that. I've been quite fortunate enough to just have work that got me noticed, basically. So it's probably not good advice for people nowadays, though, because the market is so full and the market is so saturated. Everybody wants a job. Everybody's doing 3D. Loads of people are really, really good at it. So it's getting harder and harder for people to stand out these days. So, but it's like I did really well at school. I've got a degree in graphic design, but when I look back at it, it doesn't. None of that means anything. The only thing that matters is if your work is any good, and if you put the work in and you do the good work, that's all people need to know. Some employers might not even look at your CV or your qualifications or your history. If your work's good, that's all they care about. So that's probably the best advice I can give. Just concentrate on your work, and the clients will come.
Definitely. You just touched a topic here that you say that you used to do a lot of art in your free time, and pretty much that's the way you got your portfolio. And in the previous interviews that I had, there's this topic where people do a portfolio feel of art that they think they should be there in the portfolio in order to get a job, and that people feels the difference between a portfolio that has work that you actually love comparison to a portfolio that has work uh, that just feels like it's there to get a job. And it's something that you can feel as well when you see the portfolios.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a lot of people out there that don't do much personal work. So when you look at their portfolios, you see a lot of stuff in there that has come from their time at a studio or something, like a lot of turnarounds for models or a lot of props or assets or concept artwork for the same character, and you can tell that that's for paid work. And when you see people's personal work, sometimes it shines a little bit more because you can tell that they invest that much time into something. It's a labor of love. So much like my own, I find that my best work is my personal work because you can spend as long as you want on it. There's no deadlines, there's no clients, there's no money involved. You just spend as long as you want to make it look as good as you want. But it is important at times to show examples of stuff that you've done in studios, because if, like mine, I show them like a nicely illustrated 3D illustration with the background and everything, that shows that it's a good image, but it took a long time to do, and not a lot of clients want to give you like 2 weeks to do an image, So a lot of people just want to see a model like on a turntable or on a T-pose or something like that. So in the case of my toy modeling work that I've done for Hasbro, it's useful to show grey renders if you just want to show off the actual quality of the model. But yeah, I always find that the most attention grabbing ones and the things that sort of show off how good you truly can be is always your personal work, because you put the most time and the most effort into that.
Nice, definitely. Also, uh, is there an advice that you would like to give art people who want to become 3D artists that we haven't touched yet in this interview?
Um, no, I feel like I just kind of be repeating myself. I mean, the main thing is to keep practicing, try to be original, try to stand out, um, try and do something that nobody else has. I mean, I see a lot of people these days that do amazing models, but they're based on other people's drawings, which is all good and well if you want to improve your modeling skills and you want to get a job modeling other people's designs, which even I do as my paid job. I model other people's designs. But if you want to stand out and you want to make something that's like, wow, this is all my work, do your own thing as well. Because if you model somebody else's design, the main thing that makes that cool is the other person's design, and that's not yours, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of hard to. It's more satisfying to create something completely from scratch, because you can say you designed it and you modeled it rather than you just modeled it. But it's difficult, because if you can show your ability to take someone's concept and model it, that is a useful skill for employers. But yeah, I mean, I guess the best thing you can do is just keep practicing, stand out, try to present your work more interestingly. You know, there's a lot of stuff out there that's just T poses or wireframes, and it's all useful. But if you want to woo somebody and you want to make your work stand out, try and do something with it, pose it, give it some personality, bring it to life. You know, backgrounds or composition, just do something to make it more of an image rather than just an example of you making a model and putting it on a blank background, you know. So yeah, but it's difficult to stand out now because so many people want to do 3D, but there's still a lot of really good artists out there. So just basically get good.
Definitely. Also, this is a question, a really hard question that I like to ask all the people that I interview. Let's imagine that you wake up tomorrow in another universe. Nobody knows you, but you still have all your knowledge, all your experience, all your skills, and you have $500. What will you do to get to this point that you are right now as soon as possible?
With $500,
Yes.
do I have a computer?
Yes.
Okay. That's a good question. See, I don't know because I seem to, as I was saying to you earlier, I don't feel like I'm very technically up to date with everything. So I kind of feel like a bit of a dinosaur at the moment, you know, in a world full of like all these kids that have learned all the new software and ZBrush and stuff like that. So I kind of wonder, and I kind of got a bit of a complex about it, that if basically everybody's knowledge of me was wiped clean, and I didn't have my followers and my fan base and my client base, if my work was just suddenly thrust out there now, would it get noticed? Because I feel as if I've been doing it for so long that I've already established myself, if you know what I mean. But if I weren't established and I had to make a name for myself right now, I often wonder, could my work like stand out nowadays? And I'd like to think that it could, because as I was saying to you earlier, I try to put a lot of personality into my work rather than just make a cool model and make it tell a story or make the character come to life in a way that you would normally see on a 2D piece of artwork rather than a 3D rendered thing. So I think if I woke up in this horrible mirror world and I had £500, I'd just basically spend that £500 very sparingly. Well, for starters, I'll move out of London because I won't be able to afford to live here. I'd spend it very sparingly on barely living, while working day and night on personal pieces to put out there and, you know, hopefully catch the attention of some people to get some paid work coming in. So, yeah.
Awesome. Is there any last advice that you would like to give?
Not really. I think I've covered everything, to be honest. I mean, I'll just sound like a record stuck on a loop if I kept repeating the same things, but just keep practicing, get good at what you're doing, try to be original, try to do all your own stuff, and yeah, just impress people.
Nice. Also, if people want to find you online, where will be the best place to do so?
Well, a lot of people struggle to spell my surname, so I presume you'll link it somewhere, but basically andrewhickinbottom.com. It's just like a simple website that just links to all my other various websites. But failing that, just Google me, because there ain't that many Andrew Hickinbottoms out there, and I'm happy to say that I'm like #1 on the Google ranking list. So just Google my name and you can find all my websites and stuff.
Nice. This has been the last interview with Andrew Hickinbottom. I hope that you have loved it. And if you like it, please click the like button on the video below and share this interview with all your friends. Until next time.